The hallway leading to Brant Lyle's office was quiet, unnaturally so. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, their sterile glow bouncing off the glass walls that boxed us all in like display specimens. I walked slowly, deliberately, my heels making a soft rhythm against the polished concrete. In one hand, I carried a manila envelope, plain, sharp-edged final. In the other, a small navy suitcase on wheels, unassuming but weighted with purpose. After 29 years at Latham Brands, I knew the building's heartbeat better than I knew my own. I'd launched 7 product lines from this floor, mentored dozens of hires, stayed late for 300 Fridays, and now, at 54, I'd been told without so many words that I had become excess. The last straw had arrived on Monday morning in the form of a cheerful email. "Hey Leontine, I'll be leading the Bloom refresh from here. Brant's asked me to present next week. Thanks for laying the groundwork." It was from Maria Sloan, a 28-year-old associate who'd shadowed me 6 months ago. My project, my strategy, my market data, handed off like dry cleaning. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I packed a suitcase. Brant's door was ajar when I arrived, sunlight slashing across his desk like a spotlight. He was hunched over his tablet, stylus tapping that ever-present Bluetooth earpiece, blinking blue at his temple. He didn't look up until my suitcase clicked past the threshold. Leontine. His brow creased. Something wrong with the Bloom numbers. I placed the envelope on his desk with steady hands. This isn't about Bloom. He glanced at the envelope, then at me, then at the suitcase. His eyes narrowed. Going somewhere, I smiled faintly. You could say that. A flicker of realization danced behind his eyes. Or maybe it was discomfort. Hard to tell with men like Brant. I'd coached enough of them over the years to recognize when arrogance began to falter. He reached for the envelope, his fingers hesitant. "Wait, are you resigning?" he asked, voice clipped with disbelief. "I am," I said simply. And before he could say another word, I slid the suitcase gently beside my chair and took a seat across from him. Brant opened the envelope with the air of someone humoring a prank. His smirk widened as he skimmed the letter inside. He didn't read it carefully, just enough to understand what it was, and more importantly, to find it amusing. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Leontine Varela resigning. I didn't think you had it in you." I stayed quiet. Let him perform. He folded the letter and tapped it against the desk like a gavel. "You know, I always figured you'd try to hang on until retirement. That pension track can be seductive." He glanced at the suitcase again, the smirk tightening. "But hey, good luck out there. The market's not exactly friendly to seniors these days." The word seniors hung in the air like smoke. I looked at him evenly. "I'll take my chances." He chuckled, eyes flicking to the suitcase with mock curiosity. "What's in there anyway? Souvenirs from the Glory Days company property," I said evenly. "Things I've kept safe for years." His smile faltered just slightly. He tilted his head, trying to read between the lines. "Anything I should be worried about? Only if you've forgotten what's yours and what isn't." For a long moment, he didn't speak. His fingers fidgeted against the desk. He looked at the suitcase again, not with curiosity now, but calculation. He was remembering the years I spent buried in strategy files, legal reviews, email threads. He knew what I knew, and he knew I didn't bluff. "I assume you've already sent a copy to legal," he asked, the arrogance draining from his voice. I tilted my head as if amused. "I assume you already know the answer." He didn't laugh after that. I stood up, took the suitcase handle in one hand, and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard the envelope rustle as he picked it up again, this time with real care. Back in my office, I closed the door with more finality than usual. The space looked exactly as it always had, framed campaign mock-ups on the wall, a credenza stacked with brand reports, a small jade plant still clinging to life in the corner. But everything felt hollow, like a stage set, waiting to be struck. I walked to the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, knelt, and reached past the loose folders to the hidden pouch taped under the metal lip. From it, I pulled out a slim black USB drive marked in silver ink Obsidian 3.0. It was a campaign we'd nearly launched 2 years ago. The market testing was strong, the product had real traction, but Brandt had killed it without warning. I'd suspected at the time that he was protecting a competing proposal from one of his hand-picked analysts, but I didn't have proof. Not then. Now I did. On that drive were email threads, meeting notes, and early-stage analytics that showed Obsidian 3.0 was outperforming projections. More importantly, there was a forwarded message from Brandt to the finance team instructing them to rework the ROI assumptions downward before our presentation to the board. That single sentence had shifted perception and ended the campaign. I slipped the drive into my purse and pulled out a second one, an identical copy. On my way to the elevator, I passed the legal department's internal mailbox wall. Without stopping, I slid the copy into the anonymous whistleblower compliance slot. It dropped with a quiet click. Back on my floor, I began clearing my desk, not packing, just erasing. I deleted personal folders from my desktop, wiped bookmarks signed out of internal systems. A few younger colleagues passed by, some glancing at me with wide eyes, others avoiding me altogether. One gave me a small nod before ducking into a meeting room. They could sense it. The quiet storm moving through the hallway. The power shift no one expected. As I zipped up the suitcase and pulled on my coat, I paused by the glass wall overlooking the bullpen. The seat that used to be mine, once central visible, was now pushed closer to the stairwell. A reorganization that had happened weeks ago. I hadn't said a word about it. I didn't need to. I met Blair Addington at a little cafe just off Wabash, same place we used to sneak out to for midday strategy debriefs when the office politics got too loud. She was already seated, black coffee in hand, no cream, no sugar, same as always. The only difference now was the absence of her company badge and the way she looked through people instead of at them. They gave me a retirement send-off at 49, she said flatly. Cake in the break room and a floral arrangement. Then a 24-year-old inherited my entire portfolio. I didn't have to ask how she was really doing. I already knew. We started talking names. Not recruiters, not hiring managers. Women, specific, brilliant, discarded women. Rowena Greer, former IT systems architect who rebuilt the back-end infrastructure of the whole Eastern Division. Nor Evers, branding mastermind behind the Vitamin Sphere rollout. Tamsin Cortez, product design lead with patents to her name, and a pink slip in her inbox last fall. It didn't take long to reach out. A few emails, a few voice notes. Each response came quicker than I expected, and with the same subtext, I've been waiting for this call. We didn't meet in boardrooms. We met in libraries, co-working spaces, someone's quiet backyard patio. It felt like an underground movement, at first half nostalgia, half strategy. We didn't talk about getting back in. We talked about breaking the door down and building a new one. Someone joked that we were like an orchestra made entirely of soloists, highly trained, long ignored, and finally ready to make noise. There were no titles, no departments, no hierarchy, just shared momentum and clarity. We didn't need someone to give us a seat anymore. We needed a table only we could build. We called it reclamation almost as a joke at first, but it stuck. Reclaiming dignity, reclaiming time, reclaiming relevance from people who thought we'd been shelved for good. That night, after our third informal meeting, I opened my laptop and created a shared drive. The folder name was Simple Blueprint. And inside it, we began to sketch what a new kind of leadership could look like. We had just locked in the outline for our first major pitch deck. Reclamation was gaining shape, messy, alive, imperfect, but real. Every late-night email, every document in our shared drive, every whispered referral from someone still inside the system felt like momentum finally breaking free of the old world. Then Blair called me, her voice clipped and low. "Check your inbox. Now." The subject line on the forwarded email was simple internal deck. Reclamation. Confidential. It was addressed to Brandt. Sent from Jude's private account. My chest tightened. Jude Kellum had been one of the first to join us, a former operations strategist with a reputation for being methodical and brutally efficient. He'd come highly recommended through Noor. We had trusted him, trusted his silence, his insight, his calm presence in every planning session. He had copied everything: financial models, client targeting strategies, even the pilot workshop framework, and he'd handed it over to the man who'd mocked my resignation across a mahogany desk. I stared at the screen, barely blinking, while the words sank in. My pulse thudded in my throat. Rowena was already texting. Tamsin was furious. Noor silent. 2 hours later, we confirmed the why Latham had offered Jude a re-entry deal. Not just a job, but a C-level seat in a subsidiary that was being quietly launched to explore intergenerational business solutions. They had taken our language, our work, and dressed it in their colors. I walked for nearly 40 minutes that evening, circling the same park bench over and over. Everything in me screamed to shut it all down. Maybe Brant was right. Maybe the system couldn't be changed, only copied and controlled by the same people who always won. But when I opened my phone again, I found a message from Noor waiting. It simply read, "They can copy the files. They can't copy us." And that, more than any revenge or pitch deck, was what pulled me back into the fight. The betrayal had cut deep, but the wound had cauterized into something harder, something sharper. I hadn't thought about Maria Sloan since the day she slid into my old role, like it had always belonged to her. I hadn't been angry with her. Not really. She was young, ambitious, and clever. But she'd also been complicit, willing to take the work without asking why the woman who built it was being erased. So when I saw her name flash across my phone late that Friday night, I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Hi," she said, voice tight. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from." I didn't disagree. I let the silence sit. "I'm sorry for how everything went down," she continued. "I should have asked more questions, but I didn't know how fast they'd shove me into your chair. I thought I'd earned it, and now I asked." She exhaled. "Now I haven't slept in 4 weeks. I'm doing 3 people's jobs, and Brant calls me kiddo in meetings. Yesterday, he told a client I was just helping out on strategy after I spent 40 hours building the damn campaign. That, I admit, made me pause. Then she said the part that made me listen. He's running a quiet scrub. Internal edits to org charts, reshuffling teams without notice. Older staff are being pushed off anything public-facing, all under the guise of brand modernization. But it's targeted, strategic, disgusting." My hand clenched slowly into a fist. "I've saved emails," she added. "Meeting recordings, too. If you're building something, I want in. If you'll have me." I didn't answer right away. Part of me still wanted to see her as a threat, as the woman who took my project and smiled doing it. But another part, the part that remembered how easy it had been to believe we were lucky just to be allowed in, understood her exactly. I met her the next morning at a diner near the river. She slid a flash drive across the table without a word. I slid her a notebook labeled Reclamation. She opened it slowly, page by page, then looked up at me and nodded. We filed the LLC paperwork on a Tuesday morning, signed by 7 of us, and notarized in a borrowed co-working space downtown. The name had started as a joke, Reclamation, but when we saw it printed on the letterhead, something shifted. It felt real, defiant, clean. Our tagline came from a line Blair tossed out over coffee: "Wisdom isn't wasted." We put it on the website, on our pitch decks, even stitched into the footer of every email. Not because it was catchy, but because it was true. Our model was simple, partner-seasoned professionals with startups drowning in their own ambition. We didn't lecture. We listened. We built frameworks. We showed them how to scale without losing their soul. The first workshop we held was in the back room of a bookstore that smelled like cedar and old ideas. 15 attendees showed up: small founders, indie tech kids, one shy food co-op leader. We walked them through case studies, roadmaps, blind spots they didn't know they had. Blair led the session like a conductor. Rowena fielded questions like a professor who'd just come home. A week later, a local business journal ran a profile on us, the collective, that's flipping age bias on its head. Blair's photo, smiling arms crossed, standing in front of a whiteboard full of ideas, circulated fast. Then the call came. It was a soft-voiced woman from Sycamore Naturals, one of Latham's long-term partners. I remembered them well. I'd helped onboard their wellness line back in 2015. She didn't dance around it. "We've followed your work," she said. "Frankly, it's more aligned with where we're trying to go. Would you be open to a preliminary conversation?" I muted the line, turned to Blair, and raised my eyebrows. "Tell her yes," she mouthed. When I unmuted, I said, "We'd be honored. When's good for you?" The meeting with Sycamore Naturals took place on a quiet Thursday afternoon, just 3 blocks from Latham's headquarters. I could see the glass tower from the cafe window where we sat, a reminder of the years I'd spent building other people's empires. Now across the table sat a woman named Helena Parkhead of Brand Strategy, calm-eyed and razor-sharp. She got straight to the point. "We've grown tired of being managed like an afterthought. But you've built this model of pairing deep experience with agile innovation. It's exactly what we need." Blair and I exchanged a glance, not of surprise, but recognition. We'd heard this before in whispers, in late-night texts, in off-the-record sidebars. Clients wanted stability and wisdom, not just glossy pitches and 20-year-olds with ring lights and slogans. 2 days later, Sycamore sent the formal notice to Latham contract cancellation effective immediately. It was an 8 million hit. Our inbox lit up before the ink dried. We didn't gloat. We didn't have to. Word reached us that Charles Whitman called an emergency meeting, slamming his office door hard enough to rattle the blinds. Brandt's scheduled promotion review was postponed indefinitely. Legal initiated an internal audit quietly, of course. There were murmurs of reputational exposure and non-compliance risk. The board requested a third-party ethics consultant. It had taken just one signature on our letterhead to shake their marble halls. I thought I'd feel victorious. I didn't. I felt calm. As if something had finally leveled out inside me. The years of condescension, the mockery, the laughter in that office the day I walked out, it all faded into background noise. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. Maria was the one who said it best over lunch that week. "You didn't burn a bridge, Leontine. You designed a better one." And they just watched you walk across it. We finalized onboarding with Sycamore that Friday. I signed the agreement in our new office, still half furnished, still humming with uncertainty, and emailed our team, "Let's get to work." Phase 2 starts now. The ballroom was packed 500 executives, founders, investors, and advisors, all gathered under chandeliers and stage lights for the Future of Leadership Summit. I stood behind the curtain, one hand resting lightly on the podium, the other steadying my breath. When they called my name, I didn't look for applause. I listened instead to the quiet shift in energy as the room recognized I wasn't there to deliver a safe, recycled keynote. I was there to tell the truth. I began where it started, not with a lawsuit or a launch, but with a laugh. Brandt's laugh. I resigned from a company I gave nearly 30 years to, I said. My manager smiled and said, "Good luck. The market's not friendly to seniors." Gasps scattered through the crowd like dropped pins. Then I clicked to the next slide. On screen in crisp white font over a blurred boardroom photo was the quote, exactly as he'd said it. The room stiffened. I didn't look down at Brandt. I didn't need to. I felt the heat rise from the front row where he sat, just another panelist in a sea of suits now forced to squirm in his own spotlight. I told them about the suitcase, the files, the emails. But more than that, I told them about the women who'd been erased before me. The ones with resumes no one read, ideas, no one funded wisdom, no one wanted until everything else failed. I spoke of reclamation, of clients like Sycamore who had the courage to defect, of intergenerational teams that no longer treated experience like dead weight. And then I told them what we were building next. When I finished, there was no polite applause. There was an eruption. People stood, they cheered, they reached for business cards and notebooks. Cameras flashed. But I only looked at the side of the room where our team sat. Blair, Maria, Noor, Rowena Tamsin. Every one of them upright, unblinking, unshaken. The moderator stepped up with a trembling smile. Before we opened for questions, she said we have one final slide. And on the screen behind me, the Reclamation logo appeared bold and clear, right where it belonged. The applause was still ringing when I stepped off the stage, but I wasn't carrying the weight of it. I wasn't carrying anything really, not regret, not anger, not even pride, just clarity. That strange, quiet lightness that comes when you stop asking for permission and start building your own rules. In the green room, Blair handed me a bottle of water and squeezed my shoulder. That she whispered was a blueprint. I smiled, not because of the crowd or the cameras or even the look on Brant's face. I smiled because it was done. The narrative they wrote for women like us, the one where we fade, fold, or get folded under it, had been rewritten, line by line, in full view. Reclamation had grown faster than any of us expected. 3 offices now in Chicago, Denver, and Raleigh. A rotating bench of 20 consultants. Startup incubators calling us for mentorship programs. Fortune 500s asking for leadership diagnostics, succession audits, and reverse mentorship pipelines. Our inbox was no longer filled with rejection, only scheduling conflicts. But the win wasn't the growth. It wasn't the contracts or the coverage. It was watching women like Noor lead trainings without shrinking, watching Mireya field calls from founders who used to talk over her, watching Rowena step onto panels and speak with such precision that even the most stubborn room couldn't look away. A journalist cornered me near the elevator as we were leaving the summit. "Ms. Varela," she asked, flipping open her notepad, "how would you define what you've done here?" "What this all means?" I didn't hesitate. "We didn't want a seat at the table," I said. "We built a better one." Later that night, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feet tucked beneath me, glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights stretch across the skyline like a circuit board humming back to life. My phone buzzed on the counter. New messages, new meetings, new voices rising through the static. And for the first time in years, I didn't brace for what came next. I leaned into it.